just now 5 p.m. It's a little after 5. It'd have been great if I could have started right at 5. I wasn't thinking all of that. I've been just busy working is what I've been doing, but that's okay. All right, we're waiting. YouTube is just doing it's just spinning. All right, there we go. YouTube has connected. I'm going to go to right here. All right. All right, no, nothing there. I'm going to go to Theology Central. There we are. There we are. I'm going to go to right here. All right. Test 1, 2, 3. That looks good. I'm going to turn off the live chat. I'm going to come over here to sermon audio. I'm going to go to webcast. There we are. Looks good. I'm going to turn off the live chat. Test 1, 2, 3. Hang on. I'm going to make sure I hear myself one more time. Make sure we sound okay. Test 1, 2, 3. Oh, wait. It stopped playing. Hang on. I'm going to come over here to test sermon audio. Test 1, 2, 3. Go to webcast. There we are. I think we sound okay. All right. I'm going to come back over here. All right, the map is not working. The analytics are not working. So basically, I can come to one conclusion. Nobody is currently listening to me. That's okay. All right. Now, when I say that, someone will be like, I was listening to you. All I can do is when the map shows me nobody is listening to me, that's the only conclusion I can come to. I can't go, well, the map shows no one is listening to me, but actually 342 people are. That would be a lie. Right? That would be a lie. All right, so are you ready? I guess I could give it a couple of seconds to see if the numbers do anything. I'm not gonna do that. I've got enough going on here, so I'm just gonna get started. Are you ready, ladies and gentlemen? Without any further delay, we go live in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1.
Looking at our world from a theological perspective. This is the Theology Central Podcast, making theology central.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is Sunday, December the 28th. You know what that means, right? December the 28th, it means Christmas is in the rearview mirror. And what are we looking forward to, everyone? New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, welcome 2026, Happy New Year, right? I think already on Sermon Audio, they have an entire collection for New Year's sermons, right? Sermons that's going to tell us we need to do this in 2026 and we need to do this and we need to do this. And okay, we'll have lots of discussions about 2026 sermons about 2026 and looking to the new year and how Christians sometimes handle that. We will talk about that. But it is that time of year where we are wrapping up this year and we're getting ready for a new year. So I was thinking, what do I do? What do I do to kind of wrap up 2025 to go into 2026? Well, I know I obviously have a lot of other series to work on and I need to do more work here and do more work there. There's a lot of things I need to continue to try to clean up and finish up. I've said over and over that December is supposed to be trying to finish things up and clean things up. But you also know that can kind of be, I hate the word, that can just kind of be like, well, you're just doing what you're supposed to do. It's kind of just, you're fulfilling an obligation. It's not really interesting, maybe, or exciting. Maybe for some people, depending on what we're working on, and we will do some of that. But I thought, it's December the 28th. Between December the 28th and the end of December, December the 31st, we just have a few days. What could I do on the broadcast to really just be something fun, interesting, and different to wrap up the year? What could I do? It's December the 28th, 2025. What could I do to really, end the year in kind of an interesting way? Well, then I pulled up the statistics just for sermon audio alone, not for all the different podcasting platforms. But I looked up on sermon audio and I pulled up the stats for the entire year, 2025. And I looked, I'm like, okay, that's how many people listened. All right. Those numbers aren't wonderful, but okay. How many people listen on mobile devices? Okay. We could probably, that's pretty good. How many countries were reached? 136. That's pretty amazing. Okay, all right. I saw all of that. So I'm just looking, and then it has top sermons for the year. And I'm like, okay, what was the number one thing I did for 2025? And it was my analysis of Ordinary by Alex Warren. The number one thing I did for the entire year on sermon audio wasn't any exegetical study, wasn't any study on hermeneutics, wasn't anything about church history, wasn't anything about theology in a more definitive way. It was my analysis of one of the songs that dominated 2025, Ordinary by Alex Warren. That's what dominated everything else I did on sermon audio. On sermon audio, the number one thing wasn't a sermon. It wasn't a Bible study. It wasn't a theological study. It was my analysis of Ordinary by Alex Warren. What do I do with that? So I saw that. I'm like, well, okay. If that's what the people want, I typically don't do this, but I'm like, I know. I mean, you want to talk about music? Well, let's talk about music. So we are going to end 2025, talking about music. Because at the end of the year, it's December the 28th, 2025. Before we know it, it will be January the 1st, 2026. Whenever you get to the end of the year, this is usually the moment people begin to, rush to rank things. What was the best movies of 2025? What was the best books? What was the best sermons? What was the best songs? And every podcaster knows that these are great episodes to do. They usually pull in a lot of downloads and streams because people want to hear what you think is best so that they can immediately say, you're wrong, and you're wrong. Everyone wants to argue about what is best. But most of those lists about what is best aren't really about impact, right? They're more about preference. When you say the best movies of 2025, there's not really an objective standard that everyone's using to determine what is best, right? So it's subjective. What you think is best, I may think is trash. What I think is best, you may think is trash. It's very subjective. People will argue all day. I get frustrated with best of arguments, right? Because if we're going to talk about best of, before we can have a best of argument, we have to first establish the criteria we are using to determine what is best, right? The best movie, based on what criteria? The best book, on what criteria? But every site will do this. I think I've already seen a number of Christian websites, best books of 2025, my favorite movies of 2025. Now, my favorite is not best of. My favorite is a far better way to frame it because you're not making a dogmatic declaration. But this is going to be going all over the internet. It's going to show up everywhere. All right, so I'm going to do something a little different, okay? I'm not going to give you my best of for 2025 because, once again, that makes it more about me. That can be fun, that can be interesting, but, I constantly try not to make this a personality-driven podcast, right? I don't use my name, I don't show myself, I don't do anything about that. I try to make it about what we're talking about. And it appears that what people want to hear me talk about is not theology, even though it's called the Theology Central Podcast. It's not in-depth study of Scripture. They want to hear me talk about pop songs, I guess. So I started thinking, all right, let's do this. Let's slow down. I mean, we can't go too slow. It's December the 28th. Before we know it, it will be January the 1st. But let's look at 2025 and look at kind of a cultural artifact from 2025. Not because of who liked it or didn't like it or who may like it or who may not like it, Not because critics either liked it, praised it, hated it, or not ever. Not because social media argued about it, which it did. Lots of strong opinions about it. But because of maybe this question. What reached the most people, the most often, with the most repetition? I think that's a good way of saying it. So when we think of 2025, what reached the most people? What do you think? What reached the most people? What reached the most people most often, meaning they returned to it over and over and over and over again, which would lead to them with the most repetition. So what reached the most people with the most often, with the most repetition? Put that all together. What was it? Because if we care about influence, and if we care about formation, influence leads to formation. You are formed, what influences you forms you. That's a good way of stating it, right? We may refer to it as formation, maybe in a theological context, but or in a church context, or maybe it's more of an earlier church term, but formation. We want to be formed. And what are we going to be formed by? Well, in most cases, what's influencing us the most. Then at some point, if we're going to talk about influence, I'm going to talk about formation, I think we have to stop talking about what should matter, which is what the church tends to do, and maybe acknowledge what actually mattered. Because what should matter doesn't always actually matter. You can yell at the teenagers, this is what should matter. Well, what should matter may not matter. So what actually mattered, right? Sometimes it's good to stop and go, what actually mattered, especially when you reach December the 28th and you're going to kind of look back, but move forward. So what was the thing that was influencing? What was the thing that was forming people in 2025? And when it comes to music, we could talk about movies, we could talk about other things. I think when you look at what actually mattered, one album, it elevates, it lifts, it rises above all the others. And when people say the biggest album of the year, well, that phrase can mean a lot of different things, right? It can mean the album that you like the most, right? It can mean the album critics praised. It could. It can mean the album that dominated social media. Well, it could. But I don't want to use any of those criteria. I'm going to use the biggest way the music industry uses it. I'm going to use the word biggest the way the music industry uses it. By measurable dominance. Which album, and there was only one album that had measurable dominance above everything else. It dominated everything else in sales, in streams, in chart performance, and certifications, and longevity. And by those measures, sales, streams, chart performance, certifications, and longevity, using that criteria. See, now I'm giving you a very specific criteria because I know what's going to happen. Someone's going to, oh, I didn't like it, and I think it's garbage, I think it's trash, and the music today is not like the music in 1800s when I was a teenager. Okay, I understand all of that. I'm giving you a specific objective criteria, and you can make all the arguments you want. I will just pull up the criteria, okay? And based on this criteria, The Life of a Showgirl by Taylor Swift, it didn't just lead 2025, it dominated it, it overwhelmed it, it owned it, it controlled it, it defined it, it is 2025. I mean, there's no way to get around it. The Life of a Showgirl by Taylor Swift, it owned the year. Oh, I know people criticized it and people, oh, she's lost her touch and she's garbage and all. I mean, because that's it's so true in almost every area of, it doesn't matter. It can even happen in Christianity. Once you reach a certain level of notoriety, of fame, of popularity, people will turn on you so fast. They will turn on you, stab you in the back, and throw your body in a ditch somewhere because that's just what happens, all right? And so a lot of people, oh, they hate Taylor Swift. Oh, they show her too much on television when my Chiefs are playing. I watch football not to see Taylor Swift. They showed her for 3 seconds. I don't know. I'm not going to be able to live anymore. I'm going to boycott the NFL. Oh, just calm down, okay? The point is, no matter what you think, no matter what you like, no matter what you feel, or if you're still clutching to those 45s from the 1970s, okay, it's 2025, and the album that ruled the world was little Taylor Swift and her album, The Life of a Showgirl. Now, we're going to then spend the end of 2025, we're going to analyze the album. We're going to dig in. But I've got to try to demonstrate to you in this episode why we're going to do this, because of its overwhelming domination. All right. Let's start with the debut of the album. When the album dropped, here it is, waiting. All right. 10:30, at least for me in Central Time, because for me in the Central Time Zone, at 11 p.m. on Thursdays, that's when all the new music drops on all the streaming services, right? And other places that would be midnight. But for me, here in West Texas, at 11 p.m. Central Time, I can have my iPad open. I can have all the music streaming services because I typically use most of them. I can go from one to, new albums. And I can just start listening to anything. It's like having the key to the record store and I have access to everything. Oh, I love that so very much. But when the album appeared on all the streaming services at 11 p.m., I think it may have even dropped a few minutes early, but okay. But around 11 p.m., the album's debut right from the start was historic. So I'm going to try to start with maybe the cleanest metric I can, which is the first week of an album's release, which is always very big in music. Whether you understand that or not, it's big, all right? Billboard reported that The Life of a Showgirl debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200 with 4.002 million equivalent album units in the United States. Now, that you may not care. Well, 4.002 million, that doesn't sound like a lot. Okay, you may not understand it. That's a lot, okay? And that number matters because it's not just streams. It's a combination, basically, there's a combination of things. Think of it as a combined measure that the industry, the music industry, uses for total consumption. Pure album sales, track equivalent sales, stream equivalent units. So in other words, the entire listening ecosystem condensed into a single number, and that number was 4.002 million. That's not a big week. That is, let's rewrite the record book week. That's what that is, okay? It may not mean anything to you, but we're talking about what influences, what forms, what led to people's formation in 2025. Well, Taylor Swift is right there, especially in a culture that has access to a million things and typically is so very divided. That's why not one thing usually rises to the top. Well, Taylor Swift, the whole world stopped at least and said, okay, I know I'm going to get emails. Well, I've never even heard of her. I don't even know anything about her. Okay, congratulations. Some people will, especially within Christianity, they want to wear it like a badge of honor. I don't even know what the Super Bowl is. I've never heard of Michael Jackson. I've never heard of the Rolling Stones. It's like they want to brag about what they don't know. Okay, well, congratulations. You don't know. Well then, okay, this series is probably not going to be for you. But if you want to know, I'm going to tell you everything. And we're going to analyze the album literally lyric by lyric by lyric by lyric. And we're going to hopefully finish by the end of 2025. I don't know if I can do it, but we're going to at least come close. All right? Just know that it's a record-breaking week. Now, you may say, well, what records did it break? Well, when I say The Life of a Showgirl rewrote the record book, I don't mean that hyperbolically or rhetorically. I mean, it literally broke the benchmark for the biggest U.S. album week in the modern day tracking era. Billboard measures album performances using equivalent album units. on an apples-to-apples metrics that includes pure sales, physical and digital, track equivalent units, and streaming equivalent units. That's the standard used for the Billboard 200. It is. It's just that's the way the standard works. And by that standard, I know the haters are going to hate, all right? But you're going to have to shake it up. You see what I'm doing? Okay, all right. By that standard, 4.002 million units is the largest album week ever recorded in the modern era. You may hate it, you may dismiss it, but you cannot ignore it, okay? 4.002 million is the largest album week ever recorded in the modern era. Billboard even published its updated largest week in history list with Showgirl, The Life of a Showgirl by Taylor Swift, sitting at number 1. Yeah, see, that means it cannot be ignored. That means if we're going to talk about what formed and what influenced in 2025, we got to spend a little time with Miss Taylor Swift. I know you're tired of seeing her at football games, but hey, this album cannot be ignored. It broke every record you can even name. Now, how did it beat the previous benchmark? Well, before this album, The Life of a Showgirl by Taylor Swift, the modern era standard was, does anybody know? Her name starts with an A. Adele's 25. That was the name of the album, which debuted with 3.482 million units. So Taylor Swift didn't just edge it out. It beat it by over 520,000 units. That's 500,000 more units than the previous all-time modern record. It crushed it. The Associated Press summarized it clearly, and I quote, "This was the biggest first week since the Illuminate began tracking sales in 1991, surpassing 25 as the modern benchmark." So since they started tracking it in 1991, well, Taylor Swift has just crushed everything. She's the queen. She's the ruler. She's dominant. Oh, you say, well, you can't stand her. I understand you don't like her. We're not talking about what you like. We're not talking about what I like. We're talking about reality here, okay? All right. I know that's shocking to some people, all right? Now, this wasn't a streaming trick, which some people accused it of being. This wasn't inflated by one platform. The debut was powered by a massive pure sales and huge streaming numbers. Reported breakdown shows 3,479,500 pure album sales, roughly 1.3 million vinyl copies sold in the first week. 522,600 streaming equivalent units. All right. Now that's broken down into units we can get into all the measurements, but hey, it means this. It means that this album did not just dominate because of one consumption habit, like, well, people only listen via streaming. No, it dominated across every format, across every demographic, and across every listening preference. Whether you wanted a CD, whether you wanted a vinyl, whether you wanted streaming, guess what people were buying, listening to, and streaming? It was Life of a Showgirl by Taylor Swift. So that's what makes it the debut historically significant, because it dominated across every single option, if we could say it that way. Now, why the scale becomes undeniable, all right? Well, first, if we do any comparison, we got to first compare it Swift against Taylor Swift. We have to go Taylor Swift versus Taylor Swift, because the closest competitor to The Life of a Showgirl, well, it was Taylor Swift herself. Her previous record-setting modern debut was the Tortured Poets Department at 2.61 million units. Showgirl exceeded that record by 1.392 million units. That's not normal. That's some kind of alien thing. I don't even know what that is. Other major 2025 debuts, just see how she crushed this, right? You had Morgan Wallen, I'm the Problem, right? Which we reviewed in our Song of the Summer series. Well, he had 493,000 units. 493,000 units. She had over 400 million, okay, or over 4 million, I should say. Sabrina Carpenter, Man's Best Friend, had 366,000 units. Taylor had over 4 million. Lady Gaga, Mayhem, 219,000 units. Taylor had over 4 million. That means Showgirl was 8 times larger than Wallen's debut, 11 times larger than Carpenter's, and 18 times larger than Lady Gaga's. That's the kind of spread you usually see when you compare a year-defining event to the year's biggest normal success. See, the normal success, great. Morgan Wallen, you can't deny his success. Sabrina Carpenter, you can't deny her. And Lady Gaga's kind of, in a sense, her comeback in 2025, where she kind of returned to her roots. All of those were massively successful, massively influential, but that's normal influence. Taylor's on a different level. She's in a different universe. Nobody can touch her. And this is also important. It wasn't a one-week headline. See, huge debuts happen all the time in music, right? But a huge debut that has the legs to continue, that's kind of rare. That's kind of rare. Business Insider reported that The Life of a Showgirl spent 10 non-consecutive weeks at number 1 on the Billboard 200. Non-consecutive weeks mean an album had enough sustained demand to return to the top repeatedly, not just spike once and disappear. So it was there, it may have left, but then it made its way right back. In fact, if you listen to the top 25 yesterday on Sirius XM, where they gave the top 25 songs this week, guess who was number 1? To end the year, guess who was number 1? Taylor Swift was number 1. After all, since the album's been out, here we are at the end of December, and Taylor Swift is still ruling and reigning. Now, on the Billboard 100, she's not number 1 because all the Christmas songs, of course, Mariah Carey is going to take over during Christmas. But on Hits 1, where they're not bringing in all the Christmas music, they're just focusing on the top songs, Taylor Swift is still dominating, is still number 1, all right? And then we look at the year-end validation. This is kind of the receipt given to us by the industry. By the end of 2025, The Life of a Showgirl had surpassed 5 million units. It earned top album honors, and it held the highest certification level of the entire year. The RIAA certification is not subjective. It's based on documented thresholds. The point isn't just that the album went platinum. The point is it led the entire year in certification level. Right? Now, when you want to bring in streaming, it crushed everything. All right? Sales alone, I could already make my case, but streaming takes it to another category. On October the 3rd, 2025, Spotify confirmed that Showgirl became the most streamed album in a single day in 2025, and it reached that mark in, are you ready? Now remember, this is October. She destroyed everything for the year in under 11 hours. And under 11 hours, it became the most streamed album of the entire year. You had the entire year to build up numbers, and she crushed all of those numbers in 11 hours. Less than 11 hours, if I want to be technically correct. She was the top single-day album performance of the year on the world's largest streaming platform. Spotify also reported that the album's lead track became the most streamed song in a single day in the entire history of Spotify. Not just in 2025, but ever. Apple Music confirmed the largest first-day album streams of 2025 goes to Taylor Swift. Amazon Music, the most streamed album of all time in the history of Amazon Music, was Taylor Swift. This was not just dominance this wasn't just dominance on one platform. It was across everything. I mean, it dominated everywhere. All right. So, and I think another thing to consider is the velocity. And I think here's the part you gotta stop here for a second. The album's released, October 3rd, 2025? It did not have a full year. It did not have a full year runway. It posted over 4 million units in its debut. It spent 10 weeks at number 1. It finished the year as the highest certified album, and it did this between October and December. Okay, that's crazy, all right? Streaming milestones followed the same pattern. Hundreds of millions of streams in days. Listen, this is crazy. It had over 1 billion Spotify streams in just a little over 1 week. It sustained tens of millions of daily listens at its peak. At its peak, tens of millions of songs were being streamed by Taylor Swift from The Life of a Showgirl. So the album does not just win by its endurance, it just won by velocity. It did in a few months what other albums could not do in a year. Other albums that came out in January couldn't accomplish in the entire year what Taylor Swift did in just a few, months. Now, this is not about liking Taylor Swift. It's not about fandom. It's not about elevating pop music above theology. That's not what I'm doing. It's about the scale of exposure. If you care about influence, if you care about formation, if you care about what actually reaches people, then you got to be honest. How many people heard something and how often did they hear it? And when it comes to The Life of a Showgirl, it reached hundreds of millions of listeners. It generated not just a billion, billions of listens. It was replayed every single day. It was memorized. It was quoted. It was internalized. And that's formation through repetition. And if you turn on Sirius XM Hits 1, you're going to hear something from it today. I guarantee you. Well, probably within the next hour. Just go turn on Sirius XM Hits 1. Go turn it on. I dare you. Come on, go. Well, probably within an hour, you're going to hear Taylor Swift. It's not even going to be debated, you will. Now, let's compare it. If you take Taylor Swift, Life of a Showgirl, pretty much pick any song, but take the album, compare it to anything. Compare it to a Christian sermon. Even among the most well-known preachers, a very successful sermon, if we're going to really exaggerate this, maybe it will reach 100,000 to 300,000 listeners. Maybe, maybe a viral sermon, if it goes viral, could possibly reach 1 to 3 million. But that's usually because the pastor says something so shocking, everyone's just tuning in, usually to see a clip of the shocking part. And most likely the sermon will be heard one time. Maybe it will be played more than once, but not usually. If you look at Christian books, if a Christian book sells 100,000 copies, that's considered a major success. If it sells 500,000, that's exceptional. If it can get to 1 million, that is considered historic within Christian publishing. Taylor Swift hit 4 million in a week. And even when it comes to Christian books, many readers don't even finish the books they buy. The engagement is spread out, and repetition, there's not a lot of repetition. They may read it once. The Life of a Showgirl was heard billions of times, front to back, multiple times a week, across culture, age, belief system. That's not a value judgment. That's a scale of comparison that you can't even compare, right? So I am not saying, I'm going to emphasize this again. I don't want anyone to accuse me that pop music replaces theology. Now, I will say everything replaces theology functionally, because just look what people listen to. Look what people do. I mean, I've said it so many times. You can take people who go to church, but if you get them in a situation where they'll just talk about what they're like, what they're interested in, no matter what they say, you'll see what is forming them, what they're spending their time doing. It's either going to be politics, Fox News, who knows what. It's going to be it's not going to be what you think it is. And that's where the real influence is coming from. Now, you can condemn it, you can yell at it, you can scream at it, or you can go, let's go figure out what this is and why everyone's listening to it. Okay? I think we're just recognizing a reality. Few things, I don't know if we can name anything in 2025 that was heard more often by more people with more repetition than The Life of a Showgirl by Taylor Swift. Now, if we're willing to analyze sermons that are only heard by a couple of hundred people, if we're going to talk about Christian books that are only read by maybe even we say 100,000 people, well, then it's not indulgent. It's not indulgent. It's not stupid. It's not foolish. I think it's responsible to examine something that reached hundreds of millions and was heard billions of times. Ignoring it would not be spiritual maturity. It would be selective blindness. So before we analyze anything, before I start dissecting the themes, before we start making an argument about meaning, because I know we're going to have some arguments about the meaning, right? I think we should pause for a second. Do you have Apple Music? Do you have Spotify? Do you have Amazon Music? Open it up and search for Taylor Swift. Look for the album Life of a Showgirl and look at the title. The Life of a Showgirl. Is it a love story? Doesn't sound like it. Is it a confessional? I don't know. Is it a diary? I don't know if it comes across as a diary. It's life, her life, the life, as a performer. Taylor Swift, The Life of a Showgirl. She's been in music, since I can't remember when her first single, Tim McGraw, came out. 14. She was 14, 15, maybe 16. She was young when it first came out. So this is a life framed as a performer. And then look at the cover. Do you see the cover? She's not on a stage, though. She's Life of a Showgirl, but she's not on a stage. She doesn't seem to be smiling for an audience. She's kind of submerged, isn't she? She's adorned, but controlled, almost suspended, like maybe beauty itself has some kind of weight, maybe. I mean, if you want to start trying, I love to try to interpret things. You could draw your own interpretations. This isn't the image of applause. It doesn't appear to be giving that idea. Maybe it's an image of what it costs to be seen, possibly. And then the album doesn't open with a chorus. It doesn't open with triumph. It opens with, I heard you calling on the megaphone. You want to see me all alone. A voice calling, a megaphone, an audience implied before a person even speaks. As legend has it, you are quite the pyro. You light the match to watch it blow. We have kind of fire, spectacle, maybe destruction. And then we have, I might have drowned in the melancholy. Whoa, that's a good line. I might have drowned in the melancholy. Before the show, before the lights, before the performance, then it says, you dug me out of my grave and saved my heart from the fate of Ophelia. Now, that's not really a pop hook. It's kind of a literary image. Ophelia doesn't die loudly. She disappears quietly, swallowed by sorrow, watched from a distance. And this album opens up by saying, that was almost me. So maybe before we interpret, maybe before we critique, maybe before we react, well, we listen. And maybe then we sit with the album. Maybe not to decide what it means yet. Maybe just ask some other questions. What kind of world does this album assume? What kind of life does it describe? What does it mean that hundreds of millions of people stepped into the world of the album this year? And that's where we need to begin. The album, Life of a Showgirl, there she is. How do you interpret that image? And then you start track one. I heard you calling on the megaphone. You want to see me all alone? As legend has it, As legend has it, you are quite the pyro. You light the match to watch it blow. I might have drowned in the melancholy. You dug me out of my grave and saved my heart from the fate of Ophelia. Now, there's a lot of ways to interpret this, right? There's a lot. Is that Taylor saying, you saved me from the fate of Ophelia? Is she referring to a certain, I don't know, football player? Is it just to be seen as a love story? Or because Taylor Swift is a great songwriter, whether you hate her or not, I'm sorry, she's a great songwriter. If you don't think so, I'm sorry. You're just blinded by either your own bias and age, and you just can't see the quality of her songwriting. She's a great songwriter. She usually has levels there. So what else could it be referring to? Is it referring to how the football player came and saved her from the fate of Ophelia? Or is there something else going on here? I don't know. But see, that's what we're going to do. So we will walk through it track by track, and we're going to walk through it because, well, if you want to know what had the numbers, what had the influence, what had the repetition, what was blasting away in people's ears time after time after time, it was Life of a Showgirl by Taylor Swift. Now, maybe by the time we get through the album, we'll draw a conclusion that, yeah. Or maybe we'll go, whoa, that was really deep. Or who knows? My job is not to try to guide you to a conclusion. My job will be turn on the microphone and go, here's track 1, Fate of Ophelia, let's begin. And then we'll just start taking it apart. And we'll offer maybe multiple interpretations. Maybe we will agree. Maybe we will disagree. But that'll be, at least by the time we're done, we will have discussed probably the most influential thing of 2025, at least in the music world, because nothing came anywhere close. Now, I know what you're going to say. It didn't influence me. Okay, but life is not all about you. We're talking about what influenced culture at large, and no numbers come close to what Taylor did. Nowhere close. So then we're going to stop and go, okay, maybe you didn't hear it. Maybe you don't care to hear it. But maybe you want to know what was influencing the world in which you live. Maybe it had maybe its influence wasn't just entertained people. Maybe it said something to people. Maybe it spoke to some people. Maybe it didn't speak to anyone. I don't know. We can't make those judgments until we work through it. And the only way we can work through it is to work through the lyrics. Instead of just sitting back, making some ridiculous judgment based off ignorance, we'll walk through every single lyric of every single song. Or at least we're going to try, and we'll see if we can wrap it all up before the clock strikes midnight. And 2025 says goodbye, and 2026 says hello. Because before 2026 says hello, we need to look at what everybody was doing in 2025. And one of those things, billions of times, was listening to Taylor Swift, Life of a Showgirl. You consider the artwork. You consider the title of the first track. You consider the opening lyrics. You start formulating your own ideas, and we'll talk about it next time. Thanks for listening. God bless.